If you are old enough to remember your mother doing the family grocery shopping, there is a very good chance she did it at a store with these 3 letters on the sign: A&P. And here is something that will surprise almost everyone under the age of 50. This was not just a grocery store. At its height, A&P was the largest retailer in the United States of any kind. Not the largest grocer, the largest retailer, period. It was bigger, in its own era, than Walmart is in ours. At one point, it had roughly 16,000 stores across America, and 1 out of every $10 that Americans spent on food went across its counters. The government came after it as a monopoly. Newspapers called it a colossus, and then it slowly, quietly disappeared. In 2015, after 156 years in business, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company shut its doors for the last time. Today, most Americans have never heard of it. This is the story of the rise and fall of A&P. And by the end, I will show you the desperate decision it made to win back its customers. A decision so destructive that a national magazine at the time openly wondered whether the company had just committed suicide. Our story begins in 1859, in Lower Manhattan, 2 years before the Civil War. 2 young men from Maine, George Gilman and George Huntington Hartford, started a small business selling tea. Now, tea in those days was an expensive luxury, and Gilman and Hartford noticed why. By the time a pound of tea reached an American kitchen, it had passed through the hands of a long chain of middlemen, and every single one of them had taken a cut. So they did something radical. They went down to the docks and bought tea directly off the ships as they came into harbor, cutting out every middleman in between. Then they sold it to ordinary families at a fraction of the going price, taking only a tiny profit on each pound. It was a simple idea. It was also revolutionary, and it made them rich. Their first store opened on Vesey Street in Manhattan, and Hartford, who had a real flair for showmanship, made it a spectacle. He decorated it with crystal chandeliers and gas lamps, gilded Chinese wall panels, and a cashier's booth built to look like a Chinese pagoda. People came just to look, and they left carrying tea they could suddenly afford. Before long, the company had a grander name to match its ambitions: the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. Atlantic and Pacific, ocean to ocean. That was the plan from the very beginning. Now, selling cheap tea is one thing. Building the largest retailer in America is another. And A&P did it by rethinking, over and over, what a store even was. The first great idea came in 1912. And it came from the founder's son, John Hartford. At the time, buying groceries in America was slow and expensive. You walked into a store, and everything was behind a counter. You told a clerk what you wanted, and he fetched each item for you, one at a time. The store extended you credit and delivered to your door, and all of that service was baked into the price you paid. John Hartford proposed something that sounded almost insulting. What if a store did none of that? No credit, no delivery, no clerk fetching your goods, just a small bare-bones shop where the prices were far lower and you did the work yourself. His father and brother were skeptical. He opened one anyway, in Jersey City. It was called the Economy Store, and it was a sensation because it turned out that what American families wanted, more than service, was to keep the money. A&P began opening these little economy stores at a furious pace at one point. Nearly 7 new stores every single day. By 1930, the company had somewhere in the neighborhood of 16,000 stores and annual sales of nearly $3 billion. To put that in perspective, that was at a time when a loaf of bread cost around a nickel. The second great idea was to make the food itself. A&P did not just sell groceries. It built its own factories, its own bakeries, its own coffee roasting operation, and its own nationwide distribution network. When suppliers would not meet its prices, A&P simply made the product itself and put its own name on it. That is where its famous store brand coffee came from, and it meant that A&P controlled its costs from one end of the chain to the other, in a way no rival could match. And the third idea was ruthless, relentless low prices. Volume over margin. Sell it cheaper than anyone, and sell it to everyone. The result was an empire that is hard to imagine today. From 1915 all the way through 1975, 60 straight years, A&P was the largest grocery retailer in the United States. And until 1965, it was the largest retailer in the country of any kind. At its peak in the 1940s, roughly 1 out of every $10 Americans spent on groceries was spent at an A&P. The Wall Street Journal would later write that in its day, the company was as recognizable as the most famous brand names of our own time. It got so big that the United States government took it to court, arguing it had grown into a monopoly that small local grocers simply could not survive against. Think about that. A grocery store so dominant that the federal government tried to break it up. And through the 1940s, from the outside, it truly looked as though nothing on earth could dislodge it. But the men who built that empire were reaching the end of their lives, and a new America was being born in the years right after the Second World War. An America that A&P, for all its size, did not understand. The fall of A&P was not one disaster. It was a slow bleed that ran for decades, from 3 directions at once. The first force was the suburbs. After the war, millions of American families left the cities. They moved out to new houses with driveways and yards. They bought cars, and they wanted a new kind of grocery store, a big, bright supermarket, with a wide selection and a huge parking lot out front, where a family could do a whole week's shopping in one trip. Competitors saw it and followed the families out. A&P did not. It kept doing what had made it great, building small stores on city street corners, in neighborhoods that were emptying out. The company that had once invented the future of retail was suddenly building for a country that was disappearing. The second force was age. Not just the age of the leadership, but the age of the stores themselves. Those thousands of little shops grew old and cramped and tired looking. Meanwhile, the shiny new supermarkets down the road had wider aisles, better lighting, more choice, and a place to park. A customer who walked into both could see the difference immediately. And the third force was the slow loss of the one thing A&P had been founded on, being the best deal in town. As competitors grew larger and more efficient, that famous price advantage narrowed until it was gone. And when the price advantage disappeared, the company was left standing there with small, dated stores in the wrong neighborhoods, and no particular reason left for anyone to choose it. By the end of the 1960s, sales were slipping badly, and the company knew it was in trouble. And so, in 1972, A&P made the fateful decision that defines this entire story. Management looked at the situation and reached a conclusion that sounded logical. Customers had left, they reasoned, because our prices were no longer low enough, and we made our name a century ago by being the cheapest. So let us go back to what we know. Let us cut prices deeper than anyone in the industry has ever cut them, and win our customers back. They called it WEO, where economy originates. And they did not test it carefully or roll it out slowly. They converted nearly the entire chain, thousands of stores all at once. It was backed by an enormous advertising campaign. And the prices really were shockingly low. What happened next was one of the most destructive price wars in the history of American retail. A&P's rivals could not simply let the largest grocer in the country undercut them. So they slashed their prices too. The entire industry went to war. Some competitors never recovered. One major regional chain was so badly wounded that it went bankrupt a few years later. Another began a decline it never came back from. But the company that got hurt worst of all was A&P itself. Because here is what the plan missed. Customers had not left A&P over a few pennies. They had left because the stores were small and old and inconvenient, and in the wrong part of town, and because there was a bright new supermarket out by the highway with everything under one roof. Cutting the price of a can of beans did not fix a single one of those problems. Shoppers came in for the bargains, saw the same tired store they had walked away from, and left again. Meanwhile, the arithmetic was catastrophic. Selling groceries is a business of razor-thin margins to begin with. A&P had now cut those margins to almost nothing across thousands of stores at once. In a single year of the price war, the company lost roughly $51 million on sales of about $6.4 billion. The next year, It managed to claw its way back to a profit of about $12 million on nearly $7 billion in sales. Read that again, $7 billion of business to earn $12 million. A national magazine covering the war at the time openly asked whether the whole campaign had been an act of corporate suicide. And there was one more cost, harder to see on a balance sheet. When the losses became unbearable, A&P had to raise its prices again, which meant that the customers it had lured back with the promise of the lowest prices in America now watched those prices climb and lost faith all over again. By 1975, the program was abandoned, and here is the lesson, sitting right there in plain sight. When people stop choosing you, the price is almost never the real reason. Cutting the price is simply the easiest thing to change, which is exactly why struggling companies reach for it, and exactly why it so rarely works. After that, the great empire came apart piece by piece over 40 long years. In 1975, the company was studying a plan to close more than a third of its roughly 3,400 stores. In 1979, the founding Hartford family gave up and sold control of the company to a German firm, the Tengelmann Group, the American Colossus, now owned from across the Atlantic. What followed was decades of shrinking. A&P retreated out of the West, out of the Midwest, out of the South, until the company that had been named for two oceans was a regional chain clinging to the Northeast. It tried new store concepts. It bought other chains. It launched turnaround plan after turnaround plan. None of it worked. In 2010, A&P filed for bankruptcy, down to only a few hundred stores. It emerged, staggered on for a few more years, and then in 2015 filed for bankruptcy a second time. This time, there was no coming back. That November, after 156 years, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company ceased operations for good, and its last few hundred stores were sold off or shuttered. Today, there is almost nothing left. A few of the old A&P store brands still exist, owned by other companies. Here and there, if you know what you are looking for, you can still spot an old A&P building repurposed as something else, the ghost of the lettering faintly visible on the brick. But the largest retailer America ever produced, a company the federal government once tried to break up, is now so thoroughly forgotten that most people have never heard the name at all. So what do we take from all of this? There are business lessons here about the danger of price wars and about the peril of assuming that what made you great will keep you great. But for me, the lesson that lingers is quieter than that. A&P did not fail because it stopped being good at what it did. It failed because it kept being brilliant at something America had stopped needing. It perfected the small corner grocery store just as the whole country packed up and moved to the suburbs. And when the customers stopped coming, it did the most human thing imaginable. Instead of asking the painful question, what do people want now, that it went back and did harder the one thing it already knew how to do. It cut the price, and it nearly destroyed itself doing it. Because that is the cruel truth these stories keep teaching us. The hardest thing in the world is not learning something new. It is admitting that the thing you do best is the thing that no longer matters. Now I would love to hear from you. Do you remember shopping at an A&P? Do you remember what the store smelled like, or what your mother always bought there? Leave a comment below and share your memory. And if this story stayed with you, take a moment to subscribe, because here on this channel, we tell these stories one at a time. After all, every empire has its rise, and every rise has its fall.